So let's get into movies. Movies is hard for me. It was really hard.
Yeah.
So, do you want hero or villain first? Do you want to end on a high note or another high note?
Let's end on our hero. Let's
Okay.
kick it off with villain. Yeah.
So, villain for the movies. It's a toss up between two. Probably not as much of a toss up as we say it's a toss up. I mean, it's Vader, right? It's got to be Vader. But so here's my one reservation there. He's really bad, but only in one movie is he not actually cracking. If that makes sense.
That's true. Yeah.
Only in A New Hope is he actually bad the whole time. In The Empire Strikes Back, he's still bad, but you start to see the armor kind of crumble a little bit with Luke. It's still bad intentions, I believe, but but less bad than Episode 4. So that was my one argument there, because with Palpatine, I mean, Palpatine's the other choice for me. With Palpatine,
straight evil.
9 straight movies of
that's
bad,
true.
Just terrible, bad.
That's a fair point right there. Yeah,
but
there is at no point where you're like thinking that there's any possibility that Palpatine might turn the corner and change sides. Like he's pretty fixed as a villain.
Well, I mean, his character even is so blinded by the rage, whatever, they write him into being, that he electrocutes himself 3 times. He can't quit doing it. It's just, there's no growth for him. He's the same. Yeah, he's bad, and bad the whole way. But
no growth.
I mean, pulling all the strings. Man. Everyone loves to hate on the politician, right? It's an easy way to put this evil dictator in charge. Seemingly, just an average guy, and then he turns out to be horrible. So yeah, it's an interesting story, but I think you gotta go with Vader, even though he doesn't even round out his story as the villain, because he doesn't start his story as the villain.
I agree 100% with everything you just said. When I think about Palpatine, and especially Ian McDiarmid's portrayal of really developing such an to where from Phantom Menace to Revenge of the Sith, he really has developed through deceit and just through little things, right? Just this really villainous character. And you see that character continue beyond Revenge of the Sith as the Emperor. So I'd argue just as a villain and as a character, he's so interesting and so well developed in terms of just the plotting and the scheming. But man, Vader, right? He's such a cool character. He's so intimidating. He's so imposing, and he's what you remember, right? When you watched the original trilogy, right? Palpatine, he certainly has a presence, but it's Vader that you remember so distinctly, right? In A New Hope and then in Empire Strikes Back, just the imposing, commanding figure of Darth Vader. It's hard to move past that. Now, he did some pretty awful things at the end of prequels, right? So we got that. And he's pretty terrible in A New Hope. Kills Obi-Wan pretty ruthlessly.
Cuts him down.
Yeah, without hesitation. But
I just Googled the top 3 movie villains of all, or the top movie villains of all time. Guess where Vader ranks?
How much of my bias do I put in there? Number 2.
3. I was thinking 1. So Hannibal.
Yeah,
Lecter
I mean, I was too, but I was like, of course I think he's.
You had to give him 1. So it's Hannibal Lecter, Norman Bates, Darth Vader.
Okay, that's fair. That's pretty good.
He only falls behind serial killers or whatever. So, a cannibal and a deranged guy.
Which I guess is fair, because neither of them have redemptive arcs. So
both of them are also in horror movies.
Yeah, that's true.
Darth Vader shows up in a fantasy and turns out to be the greatest
sci-fi
villain.
adventure.
So, again,
fantasy. That's true.
I think that probably bumps him up to 1 there, because he wasn't even allowed to be as bad as he could have been.
That's true. No, there's something that's just so iconic about the character and the portrayal and the suit, the breathing, right?
menacing.
Just everything about the character is so iconic and just sticks with you.
It's huge.
It's and I mean, it's not even talk about how great his story is, right? Like he has a great story as a villain. Villains, you know, he has that redemptive arc, which makes him really interesting, and where he started makes him really interesting. But like, even if you're just talking about visually and just the character on screen, it's hard to get past how cool of a villain it is.
When I think about like the best villain scene for Vader, like you've got obviously you've got in A New Hope, like he cuts down Obi-Wan, but also I mean he's there blowing up Alderaan, like he's in the mix on it, you know. He's definitely not innocent in that. We get a little more layers to that in Rogue One though. But the greatest villain scene for Vader, and for me it's not the Rogue One hallway scene, although it's super cool. It's on Cloud City when he's fighting Luke, and you know where Luke is just kind of walking through and it's really quiet during their duel, and then Vader jumps out, like you don't hear him breathing or anything, and then all of a sudden you do, and he jumps out and he's just going nuts and then cuts Luke's hand off like they go out onto that bridge. That's the most intimidating Vader for me, because he's just kind of toying with Luke that whole time, and then he jumps out from behind that corner and it's like a game over at that point. I think that's so cool.
That is a good scene, because he just turns it on, like he's like, all right,
scares you too,
little boy, like you've done well. He gives him props. He's like, you know, you've gotten better, you've learned a lot, but like you don't know anything. And then because most of it's just hurling objects at him, right, on that platform.
He just sits there and he's
smashing him with heavy objects, like just relentless brutality.
But he also holds back. Like he could have just ended Luke as well.
He probably could have just pushed him off of there if he wanted
at
to.
any given time. Also, like just at any point of that. But it's got to be Vader. So that's the villain. And really, again, there was only like probably 2 to choose from. But go into heroes. There's quite a few to choose from.
There's a lot.
Who did you land on?
Listen, characters I love. I mean, I love Qui-Gon. He's a cool character. Obi-Wan is one of my favorite characters from the prequels. Mm-hmm. He might be my favorite character from the prequels. But, you know, I'm a big original trilogy guy. And as much as I love Luke Skywalker and just the hero that he is, man, growing up, it was always just Han Solo. Like, this was an easy answer for me. Something about Han Solo has just always grabbed me and just been like, this is a cool guy. And obviously, you could talk all about the story of, like, you know, the smuggler to hero to, you know, wins the princess over, all that stuff, right? Like the typical kind of story you'd expect for a character like that. But it was just the little things, like just the snarkiness and the wit, the unwillingness to back down, but also the slight stupidity in some of it. Growing up, one of my favorite scenes was just, you know, when they're trying to rescue the princess and he gets on that comm link and starts talking to the stormtroopers, and he just overestimates his ability to handle that. And so he just shoots it, right? Like he gets to the point where he's like, I couldn't handle this the way I thought. I'm just going to shoot it. And that's such a Han Solo thing, right? Like, I'm going to try to work through this, but ultimately I'm just going to end up shooting it in the end. So
I was thinking, like, who are you calling scruffy headed?
No, he's got some of the greatest lines in Star Wars. But man, no, I love Han Solo. I think he is by far, we talked about it a few weeks ago, by far the best used legacy character in the sequels. I love his character in The Force Awakens and how they bring him back in Rise of Skywalker. But man, Han Solo for me has just always been the guy. I love just the charm and the wit, but also the brashness and, you know, kind of the dumb aspects of being so bullheaded. I just
he's
love
not
his
a Jedi by any
by
any stretch.
No, he gets a little sidelined in Return of the Jedi, right? Like he's not quite at the forefront anymore. But even still, he's just got his presence on screen, his interaction with everybody. I was always I just loved his character. And that just kind of stuck with me growing up. So
it's hard to go again. I mean, honestly, when you're looking at Star Wars movies, if you're picking any of like the big characters, it's hard to say that anyone is wrong about any one of the characters because they are so iconic. So I had three that I had to choose between. And I have a hard time because they wrap up the story so well. So
That's fair.
You've got Luke, obviously. So I mean, the original great Star Wars hero. So his story, I mean, if you just said 3 through 6 or 4 through 6, you've got a nobody becoming a somebody, finding his place, the whole coming of age, all of that. Classic story, very 80s movie themed, right? Like that's how a lot of that went. And so there's Luke, but then even if you go into the sequels with Luke, a lot of hate there, right? A lot of maybe things, the way they went about things weren't what we thought was going to happen.
Fair.
To say that diplomatically. But I think even if you look at Luke, like at the end, at his end in episode 8, like at the very end of the movie, it kind of mirrors episode 6, like where it mirrors episodes 4 and 6. So he stalls like Obi-Wan. So he's becoming, what he saw his master do. But at the same time, he wins again without even swinging a saber, right? That's how he ultimately wins in episode 6. He's not slicing and dicing someone. He's being sacrificial, which is what he had done in episode 6, true to the character, right? Like he was willing to get electrocuted by the Emperor. Just that's how things were going to go down. He was okay with it. And so he's willing to do his weird little force projection thing and that be all that he has. And the heart behind it is there, right? Like whether you like how it went or not, the heart behind it's there. Even in episode 9, you see him kind of coming from that episode 5 failure where he does lift the X-Wing out, things like that. So, I can respect a lot of the full circle moments we get with Luke. Another one that I considered was Obi-Wan Kenobi. I mean, what a character. His entire existence is just loss after loss after loss.
It really
after
is.
loss. Like it never ends. And so you just see this guy who really is just like a rule book guy. Like he does everything right by the book and things never go right by him. And so it's like, I feel like people can relate to that. Like, oh, you just try as hard as you can, but everything just unravels anyways. And you just have to keep going. That's what he does. And Kenobi, the series, not an incredible series, but we do kind of see him on that march to the original trilogy, which is cool. In the original trilogy, he stays very involved even after his end, right? Like his Force Ghost shows up here and there. And even in the sequels, you hear him telling Rey, like, oh, these are your first steps. Like he's still assuming that role of kind of keeping everybody in the loop of what's going on. Because that's what he does in 5 and 6. He's always like the clarifying, omniscient being that has to tell everybody what's going on. And in episode 7, he's doing the same thing. He's like, hey, Rey, these are your first steps. He's still out there trying to beat Palpatine. So I think that's cool. But ultimately, it's Anakin. Anakin's going to be the hero.
I had a feeling it was.
So, I mean, a prequel kid. I mean, I grew up, Anakin Skywalker was my hero. The lightsaber duels were cooler than the originals as a kid growing up. They're cooler than the originals now. I mean, not that anything's wrong with the original lightsaber duels. It's just, prequel duels are better. They're the best lightsaber duels of any Star Wars.
Yep.
But you got Anakin. You got to go with him because you see like this long story too. His is a 6-movie arc. So you've got, he's the pretty cool war hero. Then he turns bad. Then he stays bad for a while. Pretty bad. It's kind of bad. Then he turns good again. I mean, how cool is that? He gets the final say. He gets to be the chosen one. So, I mean, you even hear his voice at the end of episode 9. A little homage to the main character of Star Wars there.
I would like to point out that your movie villain and hero are the same person.
Yeah, that's true. Ironic.
No, it's man, how... I mean, gosh, props to George Lucas for taking the Darth Vader character, right? And really creating a story that by the end of the prequels, you're just heartbroken for this character. and you're heartbroken for what he becomes. Like, even though you, like, at that point, if you've seen the original trilogy, you know that there's redemption in that, but it doesn't change how sad Anakin Skywalker's story is.
Yeah.
And man, as much as George Lucas should have gotten some help writing dialogue, goodness, that story of Anakin Skywalker is just so well told. And it leads so perfectly into this character of Darth Vader that we have in the original trilogy. So
you see why he's so
that.
mad.
I mean, he's yeah. You understand why he's not a nice guy there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he's got a great story. And you know, you talked about Luke Skywalker. I would say Luke Skywalker's, from like the conquering hero perspective, he's probably my favorite, right? Yeah. Story of like the hero who prevails.
In unorthodox ways as well.
Yeah, no, Luke Skywalker's such a great character. And the resolution in Return of the Jedi, I mean, we've talked about it. We talked about our favorite scenes. I mean, that is my favorite scene. Probably in all of Star Wars, is that moment where he throws down his saber and protects his father. I mean, that's so good.
That's good
but
stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's, like you said, there's not really any bad choices when it comes to these characters. They're just kind of these larger than life legends of the Star Wars lore, right? And they are that for a reason. So
right.
Yeah.
Do you have any honorable mentions like that? I mean, I feel like we can't not say Leia. I
love Leia's character. Yeah, she's such a breath of fresh air throughout the trilogy, right? Like her butting heads with Han is some of my favorite stuff, because
she has to keep them all in line.
She's so sick of him, right? Yeah. Like, and she thinks Luke is just like dumb sometimes, right? Like it's she is like, she's stuck with these two guys who just are obnoxious and difficult and hot-headed, and and she has to be the voice of reason constantly. So
even like episode 4, once they rescue her, like, she doesn't need rescued from them much after getting out of the cell. Like, she's kind of got things figured out. Oh gosh,
the attitude, it's like, this Wookiee's done nothing to her, and she's like, get this walking carpet out of my way, right? Like, I imagine Chewie's like, what did I do?
I don't even know you.
Like, you have a problem with Wookiees? Like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, just that, the pure attitude you get from Leia is fantastic. It really drives her character home in just the best way. So
The Last Jedi Leia is great too.
Yeah, I agree.
There's not other aspects of that movie are not great, but The Last Jedi, when she's conscious and not floating through space like Mary Poppins, she's great. Like at the end, like the lesson she's having to teach Poe Dameron the whole time, like it, and it shows that she led this rebellion. Like, she knows how this works, and so I just think the sequels don't necessarily do her character wrong either. Like, you kind of see this battle hardened leader. Really,
they really, and they really do a great job writing it, and she does a great job of just portraying, like you said, just kind of this hardened character who's been there before, right? Like, she is comfortable taking command. She's comfortable putting Poe in his place, because she knows better. She's been there. She really feels like this veteran, experienced person within those movies. So the complaints are there, but when she's on screen and talking, it's great.
When you mentioned Qui-Gon already, great character.
Yeah,
so
love Qui-Gon.
There's not a lot of bad ways that you could have went about picking your favorite Star Wars characters. That's the best thing about Star Wars. There's so much content out there that there are just so many characters you can choose from.
Yeah.